In this video, I'm going to review how to create items in the material file and how to modify items in the material file. I'm also going to discuss, in general, the fields that you're probably going to use most of the time, and some of the lesser used fields we're going to go over in a separate video. All right, so I'm going to start by saying that the material file in EPMX is the core of the software. Everything that happens in EPMX pulls from the material file. So, for example, I like to use the analogy of a tree trunk and tree branches. The material file is the tree trunk. It's the core, it's the foundation. Everything that you do in EPMX, all of those branches from that tree come from that tree trunk. So, for example, we create the material file and we pull it and create an inventory record. We pull from it and we create a purchase order or a requisition or a quotation. So, or asset. There's so many different areas in EPMX that are tied to the material file. So this is the biggest piece of the software. When you initially set up your site, we do a bulk import for you. If you have a need to do bulk imports or bulk updates, we have a separate video that we can share with you on that. And we'll also spend some one-on-one time with you teaching you how to do it. In addition, you can edit and modify items one at a time. Or edit and modify. You can add and modify items one at a time. Or a few at a time. So we're going to go to Master Files, Material File. I'm going to take a look at what's involved in doing this one at a time. So the first thing I want you to pay attention to is always the corporation. This is where people always make mistakes. And when I say people, I mean my customers, clearly. So in EPMX, you have the ability to create multiple entities. Our default terminology is corporation. So you can set up multiple corporations, or you can set up multiple divisions if separation is required, or you can set up multiple departments. In addition to those entities, you have a common corporation. And when we create data in EPMX or any kind of file, we let EPMX know if it's shared by putting it into the common corporation. If it is not shared across all of these entities, then we select the entity and we create the data file there. Okay, so I'm going to choose common for this example. And I'm going to go ahead and choose item code 1124. I'm going to click on add. And what that did was it changed the add icon to save. Notice over here. And it opened up all of these fields for me to go ahead and enter information. All of the required fields are noted with a red asterisk. There's not many. I find it a little funny that there's no red asterisk next to material description. I feel like this is important. So let's just go ahead and consider material description to be required. So what I've done is I've gone ahead and I've looked up an item on Amazon, a Dell computer, and I've copied it. I'm just going to go ahead and paste it into the description. Okay, economic order quantity. If you get a discount for buying in certain order quantities, this is where you're going to make a note of that. Unit of measure for laptops is usually each, but notice there's a long list here that you can choose from. I'm just going to choose EA. And then, of course, you want to enter the standard unit cost. Now, in this case, for this item, it's $529.99. So I'm going to go ahead and enter that as a standard unit cost. You can tag this item with the GL account code. You have the ability to enter a routing code, an inspection code. You can select an expediter. You can assign a primary buyer to this item. So if you have items in your material file, like raw materials, and you have a raw material buyer, this is where you're going to want to flag them as the buyer for this item. Same with any other category of items, office supplies, and anything else. These fields are not generally used, but you have quote lead days, maximum days early, and then this is an approval method, which is not going to be covered in this video. Over here on the right, receipt required means a receipt in the receiving is necessary. Inspection required means that the folks that are receiving the items in the warehouse or wherever they receive them have to note that they inspected the items to make sure that they were in good standing, in good condition. We offer serial number tracking, asset tracking, lot number tracking, and these are all items that we discuss in another video, but just be aware that that's available. If you have any questions about it, feel free to reach out to me. You also have the ability to flag an item as taxable or non-taxable by default. The stock item area is this an inventory item? If it is, then leave the check mark in. If it's not, then go ahead and uncheck it. You can fill in the manufacturer and the manufacturer model number, and you can also add one material image that is viewable from some of the search areas in EPMX for users. Now down here, the primary vendor and the alternate vendors are where you're going to want to identify the primary vendor that you order this item from. So let's say in this case, I only have 2 vendors in here. So let's say I only order it from here. I can go ahead and enter their vendor item code and their unit price. We'll just keep it the same, $529.99. And now I'm done. But let's say from time to time I order this from other vendors. I can come down here and I can build a list of all of the vendors that we order this particular item from by clicking on add, pulling in the vendor, entering their vendor price, and their specific item code, and then save it. And here's where you can build your list. This is a great feature to have because what happens when you create a purchase order and you have this information tagged to this item, when you pull in the primary vendor as you create your purchase order, EPMX will scan and pull in this vendor's item code and plant it right in the middle of your purchase order. It'll also pull in this vendor item price. If you choose the primary, or I'm sorry, the alternate vendor, it will do the same thing. It will scan behind the scenes for this item when you pull in this item code, 1124, and it will identify that vendor's item code and unit price so that the correct information is provided to the correct vendor. Additional material info, we don't have many customers that use this very often. However, there's some metrics that you can identify, and there's some data that you can store in here. The details on this area are in our help menu. So if you scroll up to the circle and the square and click on it, and then click on Help Docs, from this page, the help menu will display only that page's details. So you can go ahead and you can review what's here and then click on any additional links from within here for additional information. Okay, so once you're done entering the information, then you can go ahead and click on Save. Go ahead and create a purchase order. Pull in one of those vendors. See if I can find them. I think this was the one. Click on Add. Come over here to my catalog items. And I'm going to go ahead and type Dell in here. And I'm going to click on Search. Okay. And here is the one I just created. You can see I use this example a lot. So I'm going to highlight this. Here, as I mentioned earlier, you can take a look at the material image if you have pulled it into the material file. Click OK. And it has pulled the details of this item into your purchase order. I'm going to click on 1. I'm going to add. Now, what I want to do is show you once I go to this PO review that your vendor item code is here based on the vendor that I pulled in. Okay? So I hope you find this helpful. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions.